Holly, hooey Hollywood, where any office boy or young mechanic can be a panic with just a good-looking pan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good, where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast. Damn you, Hollywood! And here's your host, Robert Winfree. Yay!
Yay! It's me. How you doing, everybody? As mentioned, this is Damn You Hollywood. Tonight we are talking about Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Frank Herbert's epic sci-fi novel Dune. And joining me on this particular discussion, we will not be discussing the David Lynch film. Mark already did that in an on-trial format and had a lot of fun with it, I imagine.
No, David did that. I was just there.
It was a group effort.
Fair enough. So we have here with us Mark Radulich, per usual. Mark, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. Today was a great day, and I'm happy to be here tonight with you gents talking about a movie that Mike Children and I loved.
Yeah, all right, fair enough. I was gonna make a joke, but I think you'd get mad at me, so I will pocket that one.
My son's reaction as soon as it was over, God, I wish that was better. My daughter's reaction to the first 30 minutes. My reaction to the movie when it was over, well, at least it was better than David Lynch's version.
Also joining us from the Canadian offices, he's a big fan of most things science fiction related. Most, not all. Please do not harass him on various social media platforms. But David Wright is back. How you doing, Dave?
I am good, thanks. There's a reason why I don't put any of my contact info in these things.
That is probably a wise decision.
That does crack me up because David's not on Twitter to put a Twitter in there, but you are on Twitter and you're very active on Twitter, and you have a very active social media presence, but yet you don't promote any of that stuff.
I wouldn't say I'm very active, but okay.
You are active whenever I'm commenting on anything, ever.
Well, that's because that's the opportunity to poke at you.
Okay. Maybe that should be your Twitter handle. Robert Winfree pokes at Mark.
Could be. I don't know. I might switch it up next time to put it in there if anyone cares. I can't imagine anyone cares.
You never know.
That's kind of the other reason I don't put it up there. Like, who cares?
Some people do.
All right.
Dune. So
Dune.
Loki, Dune, or whatever it is we're talking about.
Yeah. Real quick, I suppose. David, you decided you wanted to be involved in this. Dune's a pretty towering presence in the science fiction universe. One of those ones that's influenced, gobs and gobs of other material. So it's been adapted a couple of different times. We have the David Lynch movie, about which the less said the better as a general rule.
The sci-fi television show,
Sci-fi
comics.
The sci-fi limited television series, etc. So what kind of inspired you to be on this podcast in particular? And when you heard we were getting another Dune adaptation, and the director in particular, were you positive, negative, any other way?
Yeah, so my first introduction to Dune was the actual 1984 David Lynch movie, which was on TV one day, and my dad was watching it, and I sat down and watched it with him, which I actually thought it was kind of interesting, though I would say that a lot of that probably had to do with my dad was there, and he had read the book, so he was there to explain what was going on to me most of the time.
Did he ever get around to trying to explain why David Lynch decided that the only way he could properly adapt an omniscient third-person perspective novel was to actually have the inner monologues of the characters whispered into a microphone and then played over scenes where the camera stares at them?
Did you not listen to the on trial we did? We covered that at length.
Yeah. I think he just said, like, oh, that's just a lot of the stuff in the book is inside the character's mind, so that's how the film dealt with that.
I have a question for the group. We talked about this briefly, David, about the effect of Star Wars and how it not only changed blockbuster filmmaking in general, but it also where science fiction had sort of died on film for a long period of years. Star Wars ushered in this sort of rush by studios to get more science fiction stuff out there. We ended up with Flash Gordon, we ended up with Star Trek: The Motion Picture, we ended up with Dune, and a lot of these, as you can see by Robert's tongue motion there, did not go very well. But I'm just wondering, I mean, does anyone have any insight as to why Dune specifically was in that? There's shit tons of science fiction books that could have been adapted and rushed into development to take advantage of the Star Wars effect. Dune happened to be one of them. Why Dune and not some others? And I only ask that question because Dune is such a dense story with so much like internal politics. It doesn't really lend itself to the kind of action adventure that Star Wars did.
I think the primary reason is simply popularity. Again, Dune is one of the towering monoliths of science fiction writing.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything, it's one of those novels that warped, for better and for worse, depending on what we're talking about specifically, the genre around it. It was that big a deal.
Okay.
I mean, it's not quite what Dune is to sci-fi, not quite what Tolkien is to fantasy, but close. It's a very well-known property in that particular respect.
Go ahead, Dave. You want to weigh in?
I think Dune works because yes, there's a lot of depth to Dune, but the basic story is not that hard to follow. Like rival families, revenge, jealousy, that kind of stuff.
So it's like West Side Story.
Yeah, like you can enjoy it at that level, but then there's the more heady stuff underneath, the more dense stuff. Like it's almost like you might be noticing kind of like an anime where like if you were to ask Lily, what's Demon Slayer about, you would get this 30-minute rant about the organization of the Demon Slayer Corps and the different demons and their life cycles. Instead it's just like, there are demons, people with swords kill them. That's basically what Demon Slayer is about.
Right. Fair enough.
But you can certainly go into a lot more detail with that. But for me, like after watching the movie a few years later, I think when I was almost in junior high or middle school in American, I hear middle school often from American sources. But anyway,
it depends on where you are. For me, middle school was 6th and 7th grade, junior high was 8 and 9, and then high school was 10, 11, and 12.
Interesting, because junior high is like 7, 8, and 9 in Canada, where I am at least, or where I grew up. Moving on, low-key. So anyway, I read my dad's copy of the book and realized it was just much bigger story than what we got in the Lynch movie, and I really enjoyed it. Then I went back, watched the Lynch movie again, it doesn't do it justice. Then the sci-fi miniseries came along, and a much better adaptation, but it was certainly hamstrung by just there's only so much you can do on a sci-fi TV movie budget, despite it having a pretty sizable budget for that. And then after that, they did like Dune Messiah, Children of Dune.
Some of the CGI in the sci-fi series.
Yeah.
Some of it's got a few places where it's really good, but after that, it's PS2.
I'm gonna posit a question out there, and we don't have to answer it now. We shouldn't answer it now because we should talk about the movie, but let's come back to it after we've discussed the movie. I'm wondering if the best way to adapt Dune and its various offspring would be to actually do a long-form streaming high-budget television show, like the kind of thing that Amazon's doing with Lord of the Rings, or that Netflix has done with some of their shows, where they dumped shit tons of money into what is or a good one would be like Disney. Disney is doing major motion picture budgets for television shows because essentially they're 6-hour-long movies. I'm wondering if Dune fits more into that model than which wasn't available to them certainly in 1984, than either what we're going to talk about tonight and then in 2023 as they announced today, or the 84 version or the sci-fi version. We'll come back to it. So let's get into the plot, Robert.
All right, the plot of the movie, such as it is. Sorry, I didn't have that up. Oh, Wrong. Almost typed in the very wrong movie.
You have one job on this show. One.
I have several jobs on this show.
Reminding me to do the plugs is one.
There we go. All right. So the plot of the movie very closely follows the first half or so of the book, which is about where they cut it. It's right in front of the 2-year time jump that the book takes, again about halfway through, give or take. I haven't actually read the book, so my knowledge of it is sort of secondhand as far as that. But we are introduced to the world of Dune. It is. We get a little bit of some a little bit of exposition in the form of title cards about the importance of the drug spice and how it's important to the Spacing Guild, which is a group of people that are essentially allow for interstellar travel as they use it to help them fold space and time. Or more space
Major
than time.
spoiler.
They talk about the guild and what it's. That's not a spoiler.
Oh my god.
The fact that the Spacing Guild was in on the destruction of House Atreides is the spoiler. And I'm not going to apologize for spoiling a book that was written in 1964.
Keep going.
So we're introduced to a little bit of that and the importance of this this drug spice, and it only comes from one place, this being the planet of Arrakis. And for a long time, this planet has been ruled by the Baron Harkonnen, the Harkonnen family. And now the Emperor, because the entire structure of this intergalactic... It's
a feudal society.
Yeah, it's very feudal. The Emperor then removes House Harkonnen from the planet of Arrakis and instead gives the planet and the spice production to House Atreides. This is where we meet our principal characters. We have Duke Leto, played by Oscar Isaacs. We have our protagonist, his son, Paul, played by Timothée Chalamet. And his not quite wife, Jessica. She's not quite his wife because she's actually
concubine or consort.
Yeah. She's not his wife because she's a member of a organization of women known as the Bene Gesserit, and talking about the totality of Dune's world building is, and by world building I don't just mean planets, I mean the entire system would be a much longer endeavor than we're going to get into. His mom's a
nun. We got it. Move on.
She's not a nun, but we can get into the specifics as we kind of come back to this. So House Atreides and all of its various people are set. They go to Arrakis to begin picking this up. On the planet of Arrakis are its native people known as the Fremen. And Arrakis is perhaps the most hostile planet in the known universe. It's almost impossible to live there. There's the giant sandworms that burrow under the ground and eat anything. There's the severe lack of water.
It's a desert planet.
It really is. There's the heats. It's a nightmare place to try and live and work.
Hang on, I don't like interrupting you, and I usually yell at other people when they do, but that did remind me of something that isn't really craft related, but it was really funny. So right. My son had a really great observation. He was like, why is it with all of these sci-fi shows that you show me, they have this great spacefaring technology. They can go from any world they want at any time they want in short amounts of time because it's film and movie. Yet everyone seems to live on a desert with no food. Why? And then he turned into Sam Kinison and started yelling, you live in a desert! Move where the food is!
Because the spice must flow.
My son is a genius. Go on.
Also, George Lucas probably based Tatooine on Arrakis.
Almost. Nice. First of all, almost certainly. The novel Dune predates Star Wars by quite a bit. The answer to that's a fair point depending on which version of sci-fi we're talking about. It's a little bit less clear when it comes to this one. We can get into that more specifically in a minute. Anyway, so House Atreides winds up on Arrakis. The Baron Leto goes about forging a more peaceful relationship with the Fremen. He does not wish to murder all of them and doesn't see them as people to be repressed and hunted for sport and all the terrible debaucherous things that House Harkonnen engages in. So he tries to do this, and the long story short of this is this was all a setup. The Emperor actually fears the growing influence that House Atreides has and wants to wipe them out, so he kind of is manipulated by Baron Harkonnen into giving them Arrakis because that will then provide enough cover for House Harkonnen to engage in a little bit of violent warfare.
Yeah, if the emperor moves directly against one of the houses, the other houses will unite together and overthrow the emperor. But if a long-term rival of the house, the Harkonnen and Atreides are ancient rivals. So if the Harkonnen wipe out the Atreides, then hey, that's just business as usual.
Pretty much.
No harm, no foul. And then the emperor just secretly gives them some of his elite special forces to kind of help make sure the knife goes in all the way.
Yeah. So, as aforementioned, Harkonnen, their house shows up with a bunch of their troops and some of the elite shock troops from on loan from the emperor. They more or less wipe out House Atreides. The Duke Leto is killed. He winds up trying to kill it. He winds up essentially committing suicide in an attempt to take Baron Harkonnen with him. Doesn't quite work out, but he gets close. Paul and Jessica wind up fleeing into the desert, where they are. They eventually wind up picked up by some of the Fremen. Paul has to fight to prove himself. He kills a man. They're welcomed into the society, and I know I'm skipping over a lot. We can get into more details as this goes on. As they go back to the, what are the Siege?
Yeah, Siege. Where the Fremen live in Sieges.
This particular encampment. That's where the movie cuts off, as Paul and his mother are welcomed in there by this particular group of Fremen. And the House Harkonnen retakes over production of Spice on Arrakis, and the Baron survives the assassination attempt. We see the death of one of Paul's good friends, Duncan Idaho, played by Jason Momoa, who, like a badass, takes a bunch of these nigh unkillable shock troops with him, but is eventually overcome by numbers. And this is kind of the setup for the second half of the book, which comes after a 2-year time skip, and I don't really feel compelled to get into too much detail here because we're talking about this movie. So again, I skipped over a bunch of stuff, but as mentioned, the plot of this, in terms of just progression A to B to C, is not terribly difficult to follow, but there's a lot of little noodly details and fun world building that we can get into as we discuss it more specifically. So that's where this one ends, with Paul joining the Fremen for the time being to kind of figure out his place in the world and begin plotting his revenge on House Harkonnen for the death of his father and whatnot, which we will see in a couple of years. So that's essentially the plot that we're going to be dealing with here. And again, there's a lot of stuff that I skipped over there because it's noodly details. And if you want to know every scene and how that goes, I would encourage you to watch the film. So, as we get into the craft of this thing, Mark, I know we usually save this bit for the end as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
But no joke, the best thing about this movie is the music. This is some of Hans Zimmer's best work.
Yeah, no, I think he's been universally lauded for putting together like a superior score. I think there's universal consensus on this, that the best thing about this movie is Hans Zimmer's score. So no real debate there.
I think he does a wonderful job of being evocative depending on what he's on where he is. All the score changes depending on which planet we're on, which is a nice thing. The stuff they do at House Harkonnen sounds very different from all the stuff that's on Arrakis, which is different from the stuff on Caladan. It's a remarkable piece of music that he's been able to achieve here, and it's the first thing that I wanted to praise because it's easily the best thing about this movie.
For sure. What did you think of the score, Dave?
I thought it was more subdued in a way. Like, it's not like one of those scores where you can just hum the theme song.
Yeah. Like
it does a good job of doing what needs to be done for where it is. And yeah, there's the little themes throughout. Like I noticed, the Bene Gesserit, they have their own sort of unique theme. And when we're meeting with the Reverend Mother and it's louder, but when they're also talking about Bene Gesserit things, just Paul and Jessica later in the film, you still hear a little hint of that, like their presence is still there. So yeah, like I don't think it's quite like, The Dark Knight, where it's a, big bombastic and, you can instantly think of that theme music and identify it with the movie. But it does a good job of holding the whole thing together without sort of being too overwhelming. it's almost like the exact opposite of the Interstellar score, where it's just like trying to crush the scene into powder in front of you as you watch Matthew McConaughey cry.
But it also fits that movie too, which is kind of odd. I mean, I love both of these scores actually. I have a real soft spot for Interstellar. I love that movie. So, Mark, if the good people out there want to hear what we're talking about and haven't actually seen the movie yet, do we have a link for them about something about a free streaming service?
We do.
Let's get this out of the way. Just get this out of the way at the top.
Yeah, it's fine. We are giving away a free 30-day trial of the Amazon Music Unlimited service. You can download Hans Zimmer's score. You can download Hans Zimmer's score for just about anything. And the link for that is getamazonmusic.com/W2M network. Again, that's getamazonmusic.com/W2M network to get your free 30-day trial of the Amazon Music Unlimited series service. If you like it, you keep it. You pay the monthly fee. It's comparable to Spotify or Apple Music. You don't, you cancel it. No fuss, no muss, no contracts, no pains in the butt. All right. David, what did you think of the movie?
I loved it. I left the theater wanting to go back in and watch it all over again. Like, probably my biggest singular criticism of the film was that it ended and we are going to have to wait 2 more years, to see what happens next.
Yeah, one of my brothers said that when they got to the point they were cutting, his immediate thought was, I could have sat here for another 2.5 hours and just watched the rest of this and been quite happy.
Yeah, and at the end, it is very much like watching the Lord of the Rings special edition extended cuts and getting to the end of the first disc where, I now pronounce you the Fellowship of the Ring, and then, the story continues on disc 2. That is pretty much like the end of the movie. It just kind of, we've hit the marker in the story, cut to credits. But certainly I think this is one of the most beautiful movies I've ever seen. I went to see it in IMAX, which it is totally meant to be seen on. I'd almost joke that this is like, Big Ramps, the movie.
Fair enough.
Yeah. But certainly like the ornithopters, it's bugged me ever since the first Dune movie that, they've never been able to manage ornithopters quite right. For those listening, an ornithopter is a flying machine that flies by flapping its wings. So to see those finally brought to the screen looking good, like the way that they show their operation, the sound effects, and how they handle, it's just a nice fantastical piece of technology that really looks good. So it was nice to see that brought together. All I really have are sort of small little picky things. I thought the city of Arrakis on Arrakis looked pretty much desolate. Nobody lives here, which I kind of thought was a bit strange. Like you have like
food is. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. You have the the locals at the front gate fence, whatever of the palace. I kind of just felt like these are probably the only people who actually live in the city. They're just it's like the palace, these guys at the fence, and then it's just empty buildings for as far as the eye can see. But again, we're at the nitpick level. But yeah, it was almost entirely accurate to what I remember from the book. The casting just brilliantly well done. I think everyone played their character incredibly well. Like the sandworms look great. The Muad'Dibs, the little rabbit mice on Arrakis, they look exactly as they should. Just all the little details are there. I don't know if Weta worked on this, but it looks like they did. So if they didn't, then that's a huge compliment. The shield effects are like they are described in the book, and even sort of the use of color
thank heavens the shields are like that and not the 84.
Yeah, I mean technology at the time, but yeah, I know what you mean, and then they were used really well.
The light shimmer that's described in the book would have actually been easier to replicate on film in 1980.
Yeah, if that's what it's supposed to look like, I don't know why David Lynch went with the Gumby blocky method that he did. I mean, it's a choice, but it's an odd one if all you're talking about is a light shimmer.
Because he's David
Lynch. I don't know why David Lynch is kind of like the key words to discuss the 1984 movie, but it's.
You can use that to discuss anything Lynch has done. I don't know why David Lynch.
I think one day we have to have like a mass therapy session surrounding Dark Highway, but that's a story for another day.
Yeah,
George Lucas wanted David Lynch to direct Return of the Jedi.
Could you imagine?
that would have been a very different. Yeah, that would have been a very different thing.
The
to see.
Jabba's palace would have scarred children for life.
Yes, yes, it would have.
But
Go on,
yeah,
Dave.
like, all the art design I thought was really good. A lot of the little details that you'd pick up from the books were there. Like it is very obvious that Denis Villeneuve really is a long-term fan of the books and really wanted to do it all justice. Like the only other sort of real thing I could critique it is the whole bit about Paul's grandfather being a matador. That wasn't, or into being a matador as a hobby. That wasn't really in the book as near as I could tell, unless it's in any of the supplementary material. And
Did it really bug you a lot?
it didn't really bug me. It was just like, oh, hey, that, I don't remember that from the book. That's just something that's been added in. The one thing that did kind of bug me was when they mentioned Jessica had Paul as a boy because she wants to create the Kwisatz Haderach. That was not in the book. In the book, she had him as a boy because Duke Leto wanted a son.
Yeah.
Like the Bene Gesserit plan was she would have a girl and they would wed that girl to the Harkonnen heir to end the feud between the houses and further their plans on getting to the Kwisatz Haderach. But Jessica, in defiance of that, she had a son to be the heir to the house. So
well, let's talk about that.
Sure.
Why do you think, David, they changed it from the source material? What do you think is the craft cinematic purpose of that?
My theory, and this might be a bit sort of cynical, is like, we have this problem with Hollywood and the entertainment industry right now is nobody wants to risk new IP. They always want something established. And a lot of the popular IP right now is very old. Like Dune is, from like the 60s or somewhere in there, I think. So, it was a different time and, different sort of politics, identity representation, all that stuff. So, so we kind of run into the problem of they want to adapt this old material, but they also want to make it progressive and inclusive. And, none of those things on their own are bad. But it can kind of cause some issues where, this story was perfectly acceptable, 50 years ago, but now, there's different sort of perceptions around these things. Like you sort of saw it where like, they did the whole, the race bending and gender bending with Liet Kynes, the imperial naturalist.
The planetologist.
Yeah, and that was made a big deal in the marketing, and there were people like, oh no, they've ruined the character, rah, 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 rabble.
The character dies at the end of the book anyway after wandering into the desert. Who cares?
Yeah, that was kind of my reaction. It's like, okay, they show up, they give some exposition on how Arrakis works, and then they're killed. Like this is not a stunning and brave change. If they had race bent Paul, that would have been a big. Like, okay, there's probably serious. If they had gender bent him, then like they would have like had to like rewrite the entire story. Like,
literally everything has to change at that point.
Yeah, so I think that there was a sort of thing to sort of try and smooth over the edges and the whole like I don't know if we'll get into this, the whole like white savior narrative where if you actually get into like the later if you get into the later books. You realize it's more of a critique of that. Well, it's more of a critique of the idea of like the charismatic leader and the dangers of that. So I think so this is a huge way of me basically saying, to get back to the original point here, I think that they changed that line in because having Jessica change the sex of her baby for the love of her man might be perceived as like, the patriarchy asserting dominance over the woman, whereas now it's like, oh, it was her choice. She did it for her own reasons. Girls, we run this mother. Right. Just kind of like the Bene Gesserit.
Right. Women don't do anything for men. I understand that. Which is 2021 and no wife, no girlfriend does anything for their loved ones. It's, they are independent, completely uncaring, unfeeling, undoing people and that never
omnicompetent people who simply permit our buffoonery to exist.
Right. And they need our semen, maybe. That's it. And they would never do anything for the love of their husband or boyfriend or whatever. I understand that.
Yeah, but I do kind of funny because you look at the Bene Gesserit, and it is an insanely powerful force within the Dune universe, and it is all women. And like, so even back then, like you could do this. Oh, I mean, they're doing the HBO miniseries or series about the Bene Gesserit,
right?
So like, I don't really think you needed to go that far if that was the motivation.
I tend to think it might have been more to do with I haven't read I've mentioned this. I haven't read the book, which is a bit of a blind spot in my.
You've read everything. List. How have you not read Dune?
I have not read everything. I've read a lot of things.
My understanding is you've read everything in Alexandria's library before they burnt it down.
I wish. But the entire notion of the prophecy of the Kwisatz Haderach, and I'm going to butcher that. I'm never going to pronounce that the same way twice, so I apologize.
You won't be any worse than I was on the 84 review.
Yeah, don't worry, you're covered, Robert.
It comes. I don't think it comes completely out of left field in the book, but it's not. It's not as. I think they're trying to weave that into the story earlier to avoid it being a thing that comes out in the third act. Like, oh no, you've created the savior of our people, and that you've created the Messiah. Like, wait, what? It's just Paul. Like, so trying to smooth the narrative over a little bit in that particular respect, I think.
Yeah. I mean, this is like a picky, it's not exactly the way it was in the book criticism. And that's a testament to how good the film is that's the level of criticism I'm having to go after it. Because it gets so much more right than it does wrong. And if this is the only Dune adaptation, or if this is the last Dune adaptation we get, I'd be totally fine with it. It's, like 99% perfection.
I think the only thing I was really missing, and this will become they're going to have to deal with this in the second book, or the second movie, because this is kind of what gives Paul all of his power.
Mm-hmm.
He's not only got the Bene Gesserit foresight, which is one of the things they've been building, one of the things the Bene Gesserit does, in addition to traveling to different planets and planting Messiah myths, so that when future members of the Bene Gesserit show up, the people will be predisposed to helping them. Not so on Arrakis, believe it or not. It was such a blasted hellscape that whatever Bene Gesserit sister arrived there first, she actually said, no, the Bene Gesserit who arrives here is going to help you people. Whereas for the most part, the others have been, when one of the Bene Gesserit show up in the future at some point, many generations later, you should give them all the help that you can. And this winds up taking the form of slightly different myths depending on where you are. But on Arrakis, it was like, no, you people are screwed. We're going to help you. But Paul not only has but their precognition, they've been blending bloodlines to help create that kind of foresight, the precognition thing. That's not, that's purely genetic, essentially. They put different bloodlines together to try and breed that into different people. He's also a mentat.
Well, not officially.
Okay, sure. He doesn't have the tattoo. Like, he's not been given the designation, but he has that ability. And that's what makes him such a powerful force. It's his ability to, and for those of you who don't know, I suppose I should explain this.
Yeah, we should explain what a mentat is.
One of the big conceits that takes place in the Dune universe is there are no computers.
Well, nothing sophisticated as far as computers go, at least.
Yeah, there's just none of them. There was
no AI. Calculators are fine.
Yeah, like your cell phone would not be allowed. Is kind of the long and the short of that, right? The contemporary cell phone would not be permissible under I forget the name, but there was a big jihad that took place, and a group of religious fanatics wound up putting forth a decree that everyone agreed to, that you will not make a machine with the mind of a man or anything adjacent to it. So without computers, these large multi-planetary kingdoms, their mathematics are done by these mentats. These are people who, through the use of spice, can do vastly complicated mathematical equations in their head rather quickly.
Yeah, so like instead of making a computer think like a human, train a human how to think like a computer. That's basically a mentat.
By giving it methamphetamines.
Spice isn't meth.
That's close enough.
It's just kind of like a drug that doesn't suck.
Have you met people on meth? They don't think it sucks.
Yeah, but
there are certain other.
Oh
telltale
God,
signs.
guys! Pedantic,
Sure.
pedantic 1 and pedantic 2. Let's go.
Point being, Paul's ability to then not only see the future, but essentially perfectly predict how current actions influence the future is what turns him into the Kwisatz Haderach. He can perfectly predict the future because of this combination of knowing the future and extrapolating current events into their inevitable conclusions. So they have to deal with that in the next book at some point, and they might just have him overdose on spice. Spice becomes basically the force for the Dune unit. Anytime you need something magical done, sure, spice is just sandworm shit, for the record. Like, I don't know if any of you picked up on that.
Big spoiler.
But that's all it is. And that's also why they can't terraform the planet, because the sandworms would then die and then you wouldn't have spice. And then the entire feudal intergalactic system collapses because you can't travel interstellarly anymore.
Yeah, we can go very deep on this, but I think we'd save that for the second part, where like most of the stuff will be stated in the film.
Yeah.
Was there anything else about the film, David, that you wanted to talk about in terms of the craft?
Certainly the cinematography stood out most for me, like more so than the music even. Like, just there are some gorgeous shots in this film. Like it is almost like every frame a painting sort of thing. It is one of the most gorgeous films I think I've ever seen, and full credit for that.
You mentioned before, like, you have to go see it in IMAX, and I'm not one to kind of beat people over the head about that. I think when you see everything in IMAX loses its novel value.
Sure.
So for this one, I joked, there was a girl I work with who was like, you got to go see it on IMAX. She's like, why? It's on, and I can watch it on my big TV at home on HBO Max. I'm like, no. For Suicide Squad, you watch it at home. The little things, you watch it at home. This you got to go see it on IMAX. This is an event picture to be seen on an IMAX screen. She was like, not Dolby, not digital. This is one of those things you go to the movies to see in IMAX.
For that, I would say, like, just because some of the shots are so big, you lose sight of all the details in those shots. So having it be on that big a screen, that sort of allows you to take in just the scope of what's going on.
Robert, what else about this movie did you like, dislike, have issues with craft-wise?
I mean, the casting and the acting is all really good. I want to give a couple of specific shout-outs, I suppose. Let's start with Stellan Skarsgård as Baron Harkonnen.
Oh, yeah, kind of steal back from you in just a minute here. Yeah, another thing that they get wrong a lot in the adaptations is like the Baron's weight and his like gravity harness. In this one, they made it more of a cybernetic implant, which, okay, fine, close enough. But you have the David Lynch version where he's like literally flying around, cackling like Wicked Witch of the West. Yeah, exactly. In the second, in the sci-fi miniseries, they restrained him a lot, but he was still played by like English character actor Ian McNeice, I think his name is.
Doesn't he break the fourth wall at some point? Like, he murders someone, then looks at the camera that's positioned somewhat oddly in the corner.
There's a bit of pantomime type acting in that, where it's a bit over the top, Saturday morning cartoon villain-esque, but still a lot more serious than the David Lynch version.
Well, sure, that guy was a screaming infant.
Yeah, but this one, I'll let Robert talk about the performance more, but like in the book, like the gravity harness, like that doesn't make him fly. That just makes him way less enough that he can actually walk around under his own weight. Like he still uses his legs to get around. It's just, he's kind of got this, gravity thing keeping his belly up. So whilst they did have him still fly around a bit in this one, well, not so much fly, but float, it was used to much better effect, I thought, in a dramatic thing, or when the Harkonnen forces are taking the palace back, you see him like floating over, the formation marching in. I'm like, okay, that's kind of neat. And even when they have him coming to deal with Dr. Yue, like even just having him out of focus, you see the big ominous blob coming towards you, like really, really well done use of that. Again, it's not 100% book accurate, but when he does fly, used much more for dramatic effect. Like, this guy's a big deal. You don't want to mess with him. He's coming for you.
He's given when I say he's given a lot of weight, that's not a fat joke about this guy, even though he is a very large person. He's when he shows up, you pay attention. He's got the presence about him, and you have Skarsgård, who's able to give that kind of gravitas to a performance, and who's got such a wonderful voice for this kind of character. Like that all works so wonderfully well. I don't know if they'll get into it in the sequel or not, but just for the record, I suppose that character is a pretty violent pedophile in the books.
Yeah, that might have been taken out for more modern sensibilities, and I can't say I blame them.
Well, it's not meant to be. It's meant to make him an even bigger bastard. Like, this is not something that's meant in any way to be a sympathetic trait.
Yeah, the Harkonnen are wholly irredeemable.
The closest we get to that in this, I think, is the people. If you look at the people who are attending him when he's in that oil bath at the end after surviving the assassination attempt, it's just enough to be a little unsettling.
Yeah, they also don't like hair.
True.
At least in this version.
Well, you hire Dave Bautista. That's kind of a concession you're going to wind up making. So Skarsgård, really great job. I didn't dislike James Brolin. One of the few good things about the David Lynch movie, maybe the only good thing, is Sir Patrick Stewart in this same role, that of Gurney Halleck.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he did a perfectly fine job. Jason Momoa is Jason Momoa. He's the same character no matter what he does.
Yeah, I thought he added a bit of levity to the film that was kind of needed without going over the top. Like, he felt like a real person in this world still.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and his relationship with Paul and Timothée Chalamet was a real highlight, I think. It's one of the few times when they both kind of let their hair down a little bit. In other circumstances, they're very formal for good reason. But around each other, like, okay, these are the people we joke around with. Like, these are... I mean, even that changes a little bit, and for good reason, when Duncan realizes that Paul is now the Duke. Like, his demeanor shifts a little bit around that. Not totally, but enough. But he's the one who kind of recognizes, okay, you're the man in charge now of this house.
Mm-hmm.
May mostly be wiped out, but you're still the man. And, I'm not going to tease you about your muscle tone anymore. You're now the Duke.
Right.
And I can joke about this with the Duke's son as we're training and getting ready, but when you take on that office, then things change. Timothée Chalamet, I think, does a perfectly fine job. This is one of Paul in the books, I want to say, is I don't think Chalamet's the same age as Paul, but he's closer. He's certainly not I forget the actor who played him in the David Lynch film, but who has looked.
That's Kyle MacLachlan.
That's it. Who's been looked 35 since he was 12. So Chalamet does a perfectly fine job. I don't think there's a look. I think if you wanted to talk about the weakest performances that we get here, it's probably some combination of Bautista and Momoa, and that's largely because those characters are meant to be all that they are.
Yeah.
There's not so much to work with.
I don't think that's a performance issue. I feel like we sometimes say, oh, this actor gives a less than stellar performance or an uninteresting performance when they're giving you exactly what the director wanted from them in those performances. It may not be reaching you. It may not be dynamic or, particularly exciting, but it's what was called for in the scene, or it's what's called for in that particular characterization. It's like saying, David Bautista's Drax doesn't emote enough. Okay, but that's not the way the character's written. He does a fine enough job of doing that character. And I'm picking at this because we talked about this even with like Army of the Dead. Was it Army of the Dead? Is that the name of it? Zack Snyder?
Yeah.
Fuck me, Rob. Rob doesn't remember anything we do past a day.
Hold on. Like, you just bringing up if your point of connection here is you want to talk about Dave Bautista, then yes, it's Army of the Dead.
Thank you. I couldn't remember. I just want to make sure I had the right movie. There's so many of these goddamn zombie movies out there with the words Army and Dead in them. But like his character in Army of the Dead was very understated, kind of monotone. It was just sort of a no bullshitting soldier trying to get a thing done. And, and we were like, Dave Bautista's perfect for that. So if you're writing a character who you need him to be a physical presence, but not particularly emotive, and that's the kind of performance he gives you, and you got the perfect actor for it, you can't then turn around and say like, oh, the weakest performances are Dave Bautista and Jason Momoa doing exactly what they were told to do.
Raban is not really much of a deep character with a lot of range. He's either angry or killing people. That's pretty much all he's there for.
Then tries to cheat in his duel with Paul at the conclusion of the book.
You're thinking of Fade. Yeah, Fade is a bit. You need a bit more of a nuanced performance for that. But I don't think he's going to get introduced until the part 2.
Was Fade Sting in the David Lynch version?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Baron has like two heirs, like Raban, and who's the oldest, and Fade, who's the youngest. And Raban's an idiot brute, and Fade's more, smart and devious.
Fade wore Speedos. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
Dude, Fade wore light speed briefs from Futurama. Like, that design is almost identical. It's a bit uncanny.
Do you want to sort of take another stab at the performances or what here, Robert?
I think the last thing I want to touch on was a little bit of a disappointment for me was some of the fight choreography, and this is purely theoretical on my end, more than me saying it's bad. Let me be clear about that. I don't object to it in that particular sense. It's more or less well choreographed. It's well shot. Like, the action is easy enough to follow. That's not my gripe here. A bit more and I don't even know how you do this. I need to preface this with what I'm about to say with that. The entire fighting style that takes place, that is used in the Dune universe, I find a very fascinating contrast. The existence of those shields that everyone wears utterly is why everyone uses blades. The shields will repel anything traveling above a certain speed. And this renders gunfire utterly obsolete because all the bullets just bounce off them. You can't use lasers against them because if you use a laser gun, when it hits, what you get is a feedback loop that essentially sets off a small nuclear explosion. So, I don't remember I have not read the book. I don't know the exact science or the logic that they use. But the point being that these laser beams would be coming at them at such high velocity and intensity, it would then be reflected right back to the person using the gun, and along the way you would get a cascading failure. You get an energy cascade. I don't know exactly.
Basically, it's magic space technology that means everyone has to fight with knives now.
Yeah. So everyone uses bladed weapons because you can get around the shield's defenses with that. You do this by traveling slowly instead of quickly. And I find this results in a fighting style that is almost contradictory. You need fast blocks but slow attacks. That's the only way you are able to penetrate the shield, because if you move too fast, your knife just bounces off. And the movie pays lip service to this with Gurney when he's training Paul in the beginning. I just don't think it was fully realized, especially when you get into some of the bigger action sequences. It's pretty clear that there's no real difference in speed between any sort of attack, the ones that bounce off or the ones that go through. It seems more a function of where you're aiming on the body than the speed of your attack, and that it just feels like a lost opportunity to me, because I find that such a fascinating thought experiment about what would that look like again, when you get tied up and you're grappling, then sure, everything's slow. But if you're fighting, a little bit more at distance, what does that look like? And sadly, I don't think they quite cracked the code on that. And to be clear, I don't even know what it would look like. It was just a little bit of a disappointment to see it be fairly standard knife fighting fare for a major Hollywood film in 2021.
So my thoughts, brief as they are on this, I think it's a well-made feature. I think it looks gorgeous. For me, Dune is definitely a more visually pleasing experience than it is a dramatic experience. Maybe at the end of the second film, I'll feel a little bit more favorably towards the drama. I think the problem is I can't help but compare it to the David Lynch version, which we just saw and talked about, and there's a whole podcast on it. So the whole time I'm thinking this is so much better than the David Lynch version. But I have a sneaking suspicion if I just watch this in isolation, having never seen the David Lynch version or having forgotten about it because I'd seen it so long ago, I don't know if I would have enjoyed this movie as much, and I'll tell you why. One of the guys from Critically Acclaimed made this point. I think somebody else did on Twitter, where your penultimate scene, your conclusion, your big blow off at the end of this movie is a knife fight between a character you just met and the hero. There's, it fails to really build towards anything. It's sort of a slow falling of dominoes, and the movie just sort of kind of abruptly ends. And I know it's not really abruptly, but it is kind of in the middle of a longer story, which is the intention. I get that. I don't want to get into sort of a pedantic debate over this particular film structure. I get this is part one, but I want to compare it to probably the best example of this, which is Lord of the Rings. Every single one of those had a conclusion that could make those movies stand on their own. So did The Hobbit, for that matter. As bad or as good as you think the Hobbit movies are, almost every single one of them had a very definitive end that if you just watched it by itself as a movie, you feel like, okay, whatever conflict they were dealing with in that 1 2-hour motion picture was more or less resolved by the end of it. The second one is a little wonky with the dragon, but even then, the dwarves were trying to kill the dragon, they just failed. And then in chapter 3, they see, what happens next. Here, you have the slow sort of disintegration, disruption of the House Atreides, which ends with Paul going off into the desert, to lead the rebels against the Empire, and
fairly close.
But that's not what the movie was about necessarily. So for me, in that sense, it lacks a little bit of dramatic depth. I understand it's probably following the events of the book, but I didn't feel in any way satisfied by the end of it. I just kind of wanted it to be over so I could leave because it was a long movie, and I had my daughter halfway asleep through it and my son who was bouncing in the chair because he was having a difficult time with the denseness of this feature. But like I said, for me, it was like by the time it was over, I was like, okay, this almost feels like the first act of a story, not a full film. And I think that's a legitimate complaint about any film. If you fail to introduce a conflict and then resolve it by the end, I think you've missed a major pillar of filmmaking. And that's, I think, Dune's biggest detriment. Go ahead, Robert.
I don't disagree with you. I think the way you could have fixed this potentially, it would need to be a little bit longer. But
God,
hang on, not much, just a little bit. Another 10 minutes, like something like that. We're not talking about a lot here.
What do you want to cut, Robert? What do you want to cut to get that 10 minutes? Do we cut Stanley Tucci with the bomb?
First of all, yes, I would love to cut Stanley Tucci, especially if he's carrying a bomb.
Go on.
Some days you just can't get rid of a bomb.
I know.
I made that joke.
You did on that show.
It deserves to be made all the time. It's a good
then,
joke.
unironically, I think 2 weeks later, that episode of the old Batman series was on a local television station here, and my mom was watching it, and I walked in on her doing so, and about threw a fit.
It's the movie, by the way. It's the
that's
Batman.
it.
It's the Batman 66 movie. Go on. How do you fix my major complaint of this movie is that it does not resolve any conflicts, and what its conclusatory act doesn't really match up with anything that had happened in the rest of the feature. It's almost disconnected.
I think what you would probably need a couple of other sequences. We have the one where, again, the Baron Harkonnen is told that House Atreides is dead, and yay, it's over. Now we can go back to the business at hand. I think I needed something between Harkonnen and the Emperor. Like we could introduce that guy a little bit.
Yeah,
he's a name only at this point. We could have had something with him. And you can't resolve the big central issue here because Paul's plot for revenge is going to take a lot longer to deal with.
Right.
I think what you could have done was end it instead of, with Zendaya going, this is only the beginning as he starts learning about this new culture. maybe get him a little bit further into it. He learns a couple of things. I don't care what you choose from their culture. Pick something small.
Well, they showed that Fremen can ride worms.
Yeah,
and we've seen what a worm can do.
Well, I think Robert's making kind of a brilliant point, is that I wish we had spent more time with Zendaya's people. My daughter, in her typical 10-year-old feminist fashion, was like, my favorite character in this movie was Zendaya. And they looked at her and like, he had 2 minutes of screen time.
7.
How?
Look at the Twitter, Fred. She had 7 minutes of screen time.
7 minutes. But that is my... I don't care about Zendaya as such. We don't get to know those people, and they're an integral part of this narrative.
I think we're clearly going to get more of that in the second movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think we needed just a little bit more of it here, and I think we needed at that point Paul to announce his intention, right? Like at the moment he's going with the Fremen to live deliberately. Like that's as far as we know. I think we needed a bigger declaration of him, even if it's just to his mother. Like,
well, we did have that vision of the future where he showed sort of him as a Fremen, like his eyes had turned blue within blue at that point, and sort of showing him standing on the ship with Chani by his side, and the Fremen on Caladan hoisting the banners, calling his name, saying, there will be a galactic.
No one's disagreeing that they don't sort of point at things. I think what Robert and I are saying is, structurally, narratively, these things needed to happen earlier on in the film. You need to get to know the Fremen more. Zendaya needed more for her. Zendaya's line about this is like Danny Zuko from Grease. This is in the end. This is only the beginning. And I kind of felt like it was a similar sort of tone as I think it's Faramir. I think you and I know each other a little better now. What the fuck? How?
Yeah. Well, like the book, I pretty much divide into like 3 main sections. You have the first part, which is, Atreides moved to Arrakis. Right. We know there's a trap, and you're just waiting for it to be sprung. The trap is sprung. Everyone dies. Paul and Jessica escape, and I think Duncan and Gurney as well.
That is the one advantage the David Lynch version has over this. It gets there a lot faster.
Yeah. Then you have part 2, which is Paul and Jessica wandering the desert for way too long, which thankfully was not too long here. And then you get third part, they're accepted by the Fremen. We learn the ways of the Fremen, and Paul turns them into the new army that will eventually lead to his, the completion of his revenge.
I feel like that we needed to have knocked out House Atreides in the first 30 to 45 minutes of the movie. I feel like, and maybe I'm off on my times here. Maybe that is when it happens. It felt a lot longer. Go ahead, Robert.
I think you could salvage this even if after we get to the Fremen, we do something there. Again, we can do something smaller there. It doesn't need to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a little bit of like Paul looking to his, he can even sign this to her if we wanted to be subtle about it, but just Paul going, we can use these people to deal with the Harkonnen. I need something that is very clearly pointing that Paul is not just here to live out his days happily as a Fremen. Like, no, this is my ticket. This is my ticket to get even.
Yeah, he's got to arm the Ewoks to battle the rebels.
Yeah,
battle the Empire.
I just need something like that, even if it's, and again, just between him and his mother, even just like these people are going to be our instrument of war, and we are going to settle things with House Harkonnen. And then, because again, we're gonna jump 2 years into the future for the next movie, so that being kind of the impetus for our time jump, we now know that Paul is not just here living as a hippie.
Right.
Like he's got goals, he's got plans, he is active within the structure of the film instead of simply being here a bit more passively.
Yeah. I like the idea. I'm glad they're splitting this into 2. I know it's probably hard to figure out what is your Helm's Deep moment going to be in this movie, especially if there really isn't one. In the book. So I get all that.
Well, the Helm's Deep moment is the second half of the book. Like,
well, that's the problem. Like when you're sitting down and you're trying to adapt this thing, you still have to remember you're making a movie, and movies have conclusions. You can't just be like, okay, I understand. It would be like if the entire Lord of the Rings, was like the whole first movie was just getting to Rivendell. And they're like, okay, and you are the Fellowship of the Ring. Roll credits. And you're like, wait, what? You know?
It's they're stuck between a rock and a hard place with this because to do the story justice, we need 2 films, but no one's going to sit through that long, and the studio's not willing to bankroll part 2 right away until part 1 is done. And just the structure of the book, you sort of have your big action set pieces. The one at the beginning where you have the Harkonnen siege of Arrakis, and then you have the one at the end, which I'm not going to say due to spoilers. And so this is why you have this.
But this is why Peter Jackson did things like invent the Hobbit River ride. Where they're going through the barrels, and it's like an exciting action sequence, which everyone's like, this is the dumbest thing ever. Except if you don't know the book and you're just looking for a fun movie, that's an awesome action sequence. And it's there because without it, you've got nothing.
Please come check out the ride at Universal Studios.
So I totally agree. Like you after seeing all the big action of the fall of Arrakis, and then at the end we have Paul fights a guy with a knife.
Right, that you haven't met before. It's
and I think they try and do it up a bit. Or this is this is the point where he has to take his first life, and will he be able to do it? But even still, it doesn't. It just doesn't match the stakes of what we had seen so far. Like I know, like they made the end point. Paul and Jessica have found safety. Everyone thinks they're dead, so they're not being pursued anymore. And the Fremen, they know how to keep them alive in the desert. So we have found a safe refuge. But it's not a great grandiose end, and it just kind of pitters off. And I agree. Like I agree. Like that is the weakest part of the movie, is that the ending doesn't really give you a solid ending.
Again, I think it would have been slightly more satisfactory if we just get Paul swearing revenge. Like if he makes abundantly clear, no,
let's hunt some orc.
Yeah. Like something like that. Like, okay, this might take some time, but I'm gonna balance the ledger here. Like,
because there's a bit where Jessica is saying, we need to get off this world. We need to get back to like the lands, or like the council of houses, so we can expose the Emperor's crimes and bring him against us. I mean, like, look, your whole house is like 3 people now. Like, you're, no one's going to be taking you seriously. I'm sorry. Like, but I digress. And then, it's Paul says, no, I know my path is here into the desert. If he sort of said, no, like our vengeance or our justice is not going to ally with getting back into space and with the other houses. Our justice lies here with the Fremen and their struggle against the Harkonnen.
Yeah. The system will not help us at this point. But I think we've got something here that can circumvent it. Yeah.
But again, like, if we're at this level of criticism, I think it kind of says that, 90% of this film is solidly good.
Look, I'm not saying it's a bad film, but but there are narrative and structural problems that are problematic. And I think this is it's good to have a variety of opinions on something like this, like people who know the books, kind of know the books, and books are for burning. And it's because I can't, because you're like, but Mark, this shit in the book that's going to happen. You have to be patient.
I'm doing my best not to do that, but I appreciate that. Yeah, this is just, they took the book and cut it at one bit, and that's the end.
Because this was and I keep bringing this up, but that was the problem with Lord of the Rings that people had. It was just like, there were people who hadn't read the books that accepted the films for what they were, and even complained they were a little long. And had multiple endings and such, and then there were people who read the books that are like, "Where's Tom Bombadil?" It just goes on and on.
My issue with in the book thing is it's when you don't understand something that's happening in the movie, and it says, "Oh, well, it's explained in the book." Well, then there's a problem. Whereas here it's just like the proper ending of the story is in the books because they only adapted half the book. Last point. If we could fast forward into 2023 when part 2 comes out and you watch part 1, then part 2, then it'd be like, oh, okay, I actually saw the full story here.
Right. But, and I've said this before, one, the art of adaptation is not merely taking page by page, line by line, and, and storyboarding them. There's an art to adaptation, and some things are not going to make the screen. Some things are going to get invented out of whole cloth. I know for some people who are really concrete about this sort of thing, inventing something out of whole cloth and inserting it into a movie that isn't in the source material is heresy. It's but I have news for you people. The Bible isn't the Bible either. That's been rewritten and shit's missing from it. So let's calm down about the art of
good night, everyone. It's been fun knowing you.
Read your history of the Bible, people.
Yeah, look, as the only religious guy here on this particular panel, yeah, look, there's a reason there's 18 different versions of the Bible. Some of them chose to keep different things.
Second thing, and this will be the last thing we'll move on, is it's not just not every line of a book gets storyboarded. It's also, you have to remember, and I say this all the time, movies are not books and books are not movies. And this is the argument I get into with comics people too, is there's an art to making a movie. There are things that have to happen in a movie that you don't have to do in the written word. There are things that happen on a television show. Television is structured differently than feature length motion pictures. It's
well, it used to be.
It's nitty gritty stuff. But but this is sort of the essence of film criticism. What is film, right? It's not a book. It's not a comic. It's not a television show. It's a very specific thing. And it can be done a variety of different ways. And my problem with Dune Part 1 is that in some cases, it doesn't quite hit the bullseye the way that it should have. I think people, Robert's ongoing incessant criticism that there's no movies for adults in cinema anymore.
Very few.
Well, judging from the reaction of your son, this is definitely a movie for adults.
I can't tell you how nice it was to watch this movie and not feel like I'm having to deal with someone trying to talk to a 5-year-old.
But I think then that unfairly inflates the criticism of this movie. Everyone's just sort of taking a deep sigh and going, "Oh, finally, a movie that doesn't talk down to me." Great. That doesn't make it perfect either. And that's sort of my big issue with the conversation that's come out of Dune. Is like, it's a mess. No, it's not a fucking masterpiece. It's just not. It's really good. It's not a masterpiece. It's by no means perfect.
Now, I imagine Part 2 will probably wind up more deserving of high praise, given what they have left to adapt and how they can structure it as far as film goes.
Yeah, for me, this is our third kick at the can here. Like, this is the third attempt to adapt this book to the screen. I'm not including Jodorowsky's Dune.
Oh, come on!
I'm not downplaying Jodorowsky's Dune. It never got made. Like, it didn't get past pre-production. So sorry. Like, there's no movie to watch from Jodorowsky other than the documentary.
Like, there's no Gambit.
Yeah. Ooh, yeah. So this is our third kick at the can, and this is the one that has done miles better than anything else, and it comes greatly close. And yes, I agree, due to the circumstances of its production, they weren't willing to go for 2 movies right off the bat. So that was the price that had to be paid. That was the gamble Villeneuve made. And as a fan of the source material, I can handle that. Like, I'm willing to pay that price to get what we got. And especially knowing that this will continue on to be finished in the end. And yeah, like if you're not familiar with the source material, I can totally see how it doesn't work for you. Like,
and then we'll get a 5-hour supercut re-release.
Oh, I hope.
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready to move on?
Let me think real fast.
Come on, I need to poke at the copyright gods.
Yeah, you're gonna get us in trouble one of these days the way you do that.
Yes, coming soon to all of my podcasts. No more copyrighted music.
Is there anything else I wanted to say about this? I think all in all, it's a good movie. It's visually stunning. The acting is all good. The music's great. This is definitely worth a watch. I mean, not if you're a 12-year-old, but hey, most of the world.
Or a 7 or a 10.
Sure. Or younger is implied, but all right. If you want to be pedantic, you can join the club if you'd like. We have paperwork you have to fill out in triplicate. It's a really good watch. I enjoy. This isn't perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I enjoyed the vast majority of this film and viewing experience, and that's more than I can say for a giant chunk of what we've reviewed this year.
It's no Donnie Darko. And on that note,
here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money.
Dollar.
My son has told me on several occasions that whenever he's watching one of my podcasts to go to sleep at night, whenever I play the "Here Comes the Money" thing, it scares the living shit out of him. Like,
Do it again. Do it again.
no.
Do it again. We're gonna have to do this twice in a row at some point just to screw. Like, okay, here it comes. Okay, it's done now. I can go back to trying to sleep, and then 3 minutes later.
The other thing he said to me today, which I thought was really funny, was he was like, "Hey, that when the guy goes, 'Are you ready?' and then the other guy says no, is that James Bond yelling no?" Like, no, that would be Steve Carell from The Office. He's like, "Well, it looks like James Bond," and I'm like, "I'm sure Daniel Craig hates you now." Speaking of hates you,
that would be a very interesting take on the Bond series.
show him get smart, and we'll leave it at that.
Moving on.
That's a good movie.
$165 million budget.
Nothing featuring the great Kali is good. Just by virtue of its existence.
Shut up! $165 million budget with a box office of $223.2 million as of this recording. It's day and date on HBO Max, so a lot of what this could have possibly earned got cannibalized in the day and date thing, unfortunately. As for, I'm pretty sure it won the weekend. I'll tell you in a moment.
It did.
Yeah, Dune debuted at number 1. It knocked Halloween Kills, which overperformed.
Can we just talk for 1 second about the 70% drop to Halloween Kills? Good Lord.
Well, I mean, look. That was also day and date on Peacock. It was not gonna survive.
Yeah.
Being cannibalized the way that it was. 2, another big feature in the immediate weekend. Like, if October were any more crowded, it would bust its pants.
That's true, but 1, Peacock is still desperately trying to be taken seriously as a streaming option because no one takes it seriously as a streaming option unless you're one of the diehard abused cultists who still consider the WWE to be worth your time.
You're going to upset somebody on Twitter saying shit.
Yeah, hold on. Let me rephrase.
So that's Robert Winfree at RadulichAndBroadcastingNetwork.com.
No. Hold on. Well, let me do this. Let me do this properly then. One of the brain dead, much abused cultists who thinks any professional wrestling is worth your time. Let's not.
ROBERTWINFREE.
No, I don't even care about that. I'd like to remind everybody that Robert writes for 411mania.com, who specializes in professional wrestling coverage for over 20 years.
I do not specialize in it.
No, they do.
They do, yes. 411 is primarily known for that. And I cover it when they ask me to. You want to know a dirty little secret about that? I don't watch professional wrestling unless I'm paid to cover it anymore. I don't.
And the people who read your stuff pick that up. All right. Anyway.
Well, I love that they choose to read what I write. So I thank them very much for that. And
so weirdly,
my disillusionment.
So weirdly, Halloween Kills was in like 22, something like that, more theaters than it was the previous weekend, despite being day and date on Peacock. That's a really bizarre thing. Anyway, 70% drop for Halloween Kills, which knocked it out of the number 1 spot. No Time to Die fell from 2 to 3. Venom Let There Be Carnage 3 to 4. Ron's Gone Wrong.
Wait a minute. Hold on. What cut off No Time to Die? Look at that. It's in 600 less screens.
Yeah, that is really bizarre.
That is. That is really weird.
Venom Let There Be Carnage 3 to 4. Ron's Gone Wrong debuted at number 5. This was a write down for Disney, which this was an independent studio that signed a deal with 20th Century Fox, and Fox got bought by Disney. So this is yet another one of the tag-alongs that they had to put on screen and not anywhere else. And whatever it did, it was going to do, and it'll either be a write down or it's whatever for Disney. At this point, they're no longer. This was the only feature that was going to be distributed by 20th Century Studios. They're moving on to, I think, NBC Universal. I'd have to go back and look again, but yeah, they're done with this. So this is a big who cares. From what I've been told, Ron's Gone Wrong's pretty good. It didn't really move people one way or the other. It's just an all right kids movie. Speaking of all right kids movies and significant drops in theaters, holy shit. So The Addams Family 2 fell from 4 to 6 and had 700 less theaters with a 36.4% drop in its 4th week. The Last Duel, which Ronnie and I reviewed, fell from 5 to 7.
Yeesh.
Yeah, yeesh is right. That's another big loss for 20th Century Studios. Shang-Chi's in 700 less theaters, and it fell from 6 to 8.
Shang-Chi's wrapping up its theatrical run.
Yeah. The French Dispatch debuted at number 9. You know, Wes Anderson is definitely one of those, like, anything that's done by Wes Anderson, film people go out and see his stuff. If you know, the theater market were at normal, it would have a fairly decent representation of theater goers. But in a market like this, the French Dispatch, you release it in theaters just to do it, and then people watch it at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got its Oscar slot.
Yep, it's got its Oscar slot.
Which it will not win, because Wes Anderson winning an Oscar would be just the worst thing.
Hansel Rosk fell from 7 to 10. Free Guy 8 to 11. Candyman 11 to 12. Lamb fell from 9 to 13. The Rescue debuted at number 14. That's weird. It doesn't seem like it has no last week thing, but it looks like it's been out for 3 weeks. Becoming Cousteau debuted at number 15. Jumping all the way down, 13 Fanboy 25, The Laws of the Universe, The Age of Elohim 27, Minion, and not that Minion, the other Minion, spelled differently, at number 31. Worldwide, expect to see some different shit here.
Well, Battle at Lake Changjin overtook Hi Mom as your top worldwide owner, as the number 1 spot for worldwide box office returns at the moment.
Yes, sir. Then, Hi Mom is number 2. And so we have the only 2 movies that broke 800 million worldwide for 2021 are both Chinese Chinaman movies. F9.
I don't even know where I don't think those have been released. Hi Mom at this point should be on VOD if you're curious about it. But
F9, The Fast Saga, maintaining its spot at number 3. Detective Chinatown, number 4. No Time to Die finally shot past Godzilla vs. Kong. It is the only domestic movie to have cracked 500 million besides F9. So it took that long. So like F9 was June, No Time to Die, October, to get past 500 million. Godzilla vs. Kong got knocked to number 6 at 467 million. Shang-Chi, which we debated on the last Damn You Hollywood, may not make it to 500 million. It's slowing down pretty hard. It's currently at 422.
Yeah, especially with the big cut in theater in its screens that it suffered this last week. I don't think wasn't that what we said last week? Was okay. Do you think it breaks 500 million? And we all kind of went, yeah, if it does, it's by the skin of its teeth.
Yeah, I can't imagine at this point, especially with like the new thing in 2 weeks is going to be the Eternals, and then the Spider-Man. So what breathing room does this have? At
this point, Shang-Chi's not even going to beat Godzilla versus Kong.
It doesn't seem to look that way. I mean, maybe it does, but we're talking. If it does, it's between 468 and 475. It's not going to go much beyond that. And that is by the time we hit December 31st.
Yeah.
Black Widow is number 8 with 379. Venom into the top 10 now at 353. That was a wild success for Sony, I think, because that was a really pretty cheap budget, if I remember correctly.
No, it wasn't cheap, but it was significantly more expensive. I think it was significantly more expensive than the first one, but it is still a wild success.
Free Guy at number 10 at 330 million. Rounding out the top 20 are A Quiet Place 2, Cruella, Dune at 223, which puts it right between Cruella and My Country and My Parents. Jungle Cruise, Raging Fire, The Conjuring, Chinese Doctors, Cliffwalkers, and The Suicide Squad with a rousing and disappointing 167 million.
Hey,
quick note on that.
Speaking of disappointing, go one below The Suicide Squad.
Okay, just every time, every show?
Not every time, but this time.
Okay, he's referring to Space Jam for those of you who are on traditional audio.
Space Jam: A New Legacy with a whopping total of 162 million worldwide. That movie has made less in box office returns than LeBron's salary for 2 years.
So this weekend, in terms of competition, the big one is Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho. On TV, you've got streaming exclusively on Paramount Plus, Paranormal Activity: Next of Kin.
Do you have Paramount Plus, Mark?
I do have Paramount Plus.
Okay. You have all the streaming services. I like that.
Everything except Shudder.
I actually have Shudder. One of my brothers is a bigger horror fan than I am, actually, and it's now a thing that we have. I can watch Shudder material on Amazon Prime.
There you go. So yeah, just a quick thing, and then we can move on to the last segment. Dune seems to have picked up a lot of international fanfare, so I think it's going to keep doing well. It's, like I said, it's at 223 million now. It doesn't have a tremendous amount of competition next weekend, so
It'll probably. I imagine it'll retain the top spot next week. I don't.
Oh, I don't know about that, but
I don't know. I don't know. Does Last Night in Soho have that much buzz?
I mean, Edgar Wright does. People liked his Cornetto trilogy. People tend to like Edgar Wright in general. I think, and Last Night in Soho has gotten a lot of publicity. Anna Joy Taylor, who was in the chess game show. People like her.
Isn't it Taylor Joy?
Anna Joy something or other. Anna Taylor Joy.
I think it's Anya Taylor Joy.
Joy Luck Club. Joy to the world.
You're gonna annoy people. Hang on.
Anyway, there's been heavy buzz.
It's Anya Taylor Joy.
I was close. There's been a lot of buzz around this movie, and it's got a pretty, well enjoyed director. So I think Last Night in Soho becomes the number one movie of the weekend. Okay. But I don't think Dune takes a significant hit in its second weekend, because I think it's got like heavy buzz now. People are like, oh, what's this Dune movie all about? But those who didn't see it in the first weekend. I also think the word's out that even if you watched it at home, you should go see it on the big screen, because that in and of itself is a novel event. But then by the third weekend, it's dead in the water.
But because Eternals is going to make a giant crater.
Yeah, Eternals is going to make a giant crater, and then 2 weeks.
By which I mean fail miserably.
Oh, shut the fuck up. What are you taking, Chris Bailey's medicine?
Look, hold on. If I don't actually expect that, for the record, but boy, do I hope so. And if I say it often, and if I keep kind of putting it out there into the universe, maybe.
Okay, you can hope with one hand, shit in the other.
Yeah, look, that's very true. And then I can use what fell into my other hand to throw at the screen when I see Eternals.
What you do in Utah is your own business. Just make sure you use the right bathroom when you pee. Moving on.
I most certainly. Look, didn't I? What was the movie you just said that I should whip? I should pee all over. Didn't we do that bit last week or 2 weeks ago?
Yes. Anyway, so it's Eternals in 2 weeks, and then in about a month from now is Ghostbusters, and by the end of that, no one will be watching Dune.
Yeah, November, for as packed as October is, November's no slouch either. November's got a lot of stuff.
Not to mention the Thanksgiving holiday. It goes like this. We've got Eternals on November 5th. Nothing of serious note on the 12th, but there's a lot of stuff that is going to be on streaming. That's Red Notice, Tick Tick Boom, Home Sweet Home Alone. So the following weekend is Ghostbusters, and then the day before Thanksgiving is Encanto and House of Gucci and Resident Evil, because fuck me in my life. And then December 3rd is nothing again.
Hang on. That Resident Evil movie, isn't that on Netflix?
No, that's going to be a feature. Nope.
Huh. Has there been a trailer for that yet?
Yes. Do you not follow my Facebook page? Do you follow social media? Do you ever leave your house? You ever get off Twitter?
Okay, I leave my house as infrequently as possible. The outside scares me. And apparently I scare plenty of other people, so we just have a mutual understanding about this.
Okay.
And I haven't seen the trailer for that, so I will look it up.
Okay. Now they released it. It was in our chat that you're apparently ignoring, but it was shared at least 2 or 3 times.
You put a lot of stuff in there.
As does Jason, as does Andrew,
there's a point being, I'm not saying you didn't share it. I'm saying it got buried somewhere back there.
Tag you in everything now. And
hold on, that means nothing. I don't know why it means nothing, but it doesn't. You tagging me doesn't show it up. Doesn't help it show up any better.
Rats. Well, this is why.
I don't know why, but it doesn't.
Maybe it's because you don't have a smartphone device or iPad.
Probably.
You're just doing it on your computer.
I am doing it on my computer. That's true.
All right, and now to scare the shit out of my son, the critical review.
Do it.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
And the critical review is brought to you by Grammarly. Hot damn on a graham cracker. Grammarly's AI-powered products help people communicate more effectively. Grammarly helps you write mistake-free on Gmail, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and nearly anywhere else you write on the web. Grammarly corrects hundreds of grammar, punctuation, and spelling mistakes while also catching contextual errors, improving your vocabulary, and suggesting style improvements. To download Grammarly today, go to getgrammarly.com/W2M network. Again, that's getgrammarly.com/W2M network to download Grammarly for free. If you know the name of the movie you'd like to see, press 1. Sorry.
If you out there would like to have us to sponsor this particular segment or anything that we do here on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, business inquiries are open. Please contact Mark.
Nope, don't contact me. Contact Sean Garmer.
Right, contact Sean Garmer at the W2M Network, and we are happy to read your ad copy and shill for you, as you can pretty clearly see.
All right, so the audience, weirdly enough, liked this more than the critics did, which shocks the living shit out of me.
You know what? I'm not surprised by that one, actually. I think a lot of the critics might have keyed into some of the stuff that we did here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think most of the audience, especially the kind that is so inclined to review this on Rotten Tomatoes, would have come away with a much more positive experience overall. Plus, you always have to have the jackass critics, and that's part of why we have this segment.
So speaking of jackass critics, Dune occasionally struggles with its unwieldy source material, but those issues are largely overshadowed by the scope and ambition of this visually thrilling adaptation. And the audience says, all right, so Andrew says that we're all screwing up the guy's last name. I purposely avoided saying it for that reason. So Dennis the Menace's Dune looks and sounds amazing. And once the admittedly slow building story gets you hooked, you'll be on the edge of your seat for the sequel. Tell your story in the movie that you're making, not in the movie you intend to make. Alrighty. Matt Singer of Screen Crush, top critic. He gets paid to do this. It's a paid gig. He's a professional. A spicy journey to an amazing future. Spice, do you get it? Do you get it?
Subtle.
You have to let me back into the call first, but
I didn't realize you were out of the call.
Sorry, my camera froze. So you hope you're proud of yourself.
Thank you.
Screen Crush.
Spicy.
Yeah. Puns are to critics what the sources are to philosophers.
You ain't kidding.
Tim Brayton of Alternate Ending. The best kind of popcorn movie with aspirations to a monumental tone and a feeling of grave importance to its razzle-dazzle.
Okay, that's a very oddly constructed sentence.
Let's see here. Michael Clark of Epoch Times. Many have stated that Dune is unfilmable. As scattershot and inconsistent as Dennis the Menace's version is, he has proven it is indeed Jesus Christ. He has proven it is indeed filmable. Sadly, this doesn't equate to riveting or engaging storytelling. It means it's just understandable and cinematic.
One, you really needed to have another go at that particular sentence, buddy. You really did.
I'd like to think that I'm a learned man. I have several degrees, and I shouldn't have that much trouble reading someone's 2-line review.
No, you really shouldn't. That's a terrible, terrible sentence. And really, I get that you're just trying to be pithy, but the crux of calling something unfilmable is not so much that it's too experimental to be put to film, if that makes any sense. It's more that it's impossible to appropriately convey the experience that the book is trying to get in an adaptation. There's plenty of Stephen King books that are considered unfilmable, some of which were proven very, very... That sentiment was proven very wrong to great success by. Misery was long considered unfilmable. But the issue is not that we can't, make an adaptation and film it. The issue is, how do we make this engaging for the audience? And if your point, sir, is that you still didn't find it such, you haven't, then the entire crux of your argument that it was unfilmable hasn't actually been refuted. You've just not understood the point that you were trying to make. You just typed up buzzwords for Dune.
Ian Thomas Malone of Ian Thomas Malone.
You self-employed loser. You feel better there. Yeah, you organ grinders monkey.
Christmas comes early.
Venezuela has a firm grasp on Arrakis' awe and wonder, but he never gives the audience a reason to invest in the narrative.
That's profoundly not true. Like, the part of the crux of this movie is that it starts small, and then the grander scope of what's going on here comes to you later. You actually have a reason to invest very early in the beginning because Paul's a likable character.
Like, it spends the first 30 minutes getting the characters set up, establishing their relationships, and building a world that you somewhat care about. Then action happens.
That's how which is how this is supposed to work, buddy.
Ernesto Diaz-Martinez of Cine Vertigo. A spectacular but empty film.
Come on.
A single scene from David Lynch's failed version, Kenneth Macmillan floating in the air and laughing wickedly, is more cinema than this entire movie.
Key phrase, failed version.
You, sir, are the worst kind of Philistine. Like, no. Just no. You brain-dead, half-baked moron.
Jason Shawman of Nashville Scene. Much of Dune Part 1 feels like the radio edit of a Jim Steinman song. It's still long, and you get the bullet points of what's going on, but you don't get the cumulative world building of all that excess.
Yeah. I mean, I much as I want to razz him for a Jim Steinman reference, he's writing for the Nashville Scene, so know your audience. Fair enough.
I think they were going more for like a ground level view of the world where we don't go into like the interstellar politics that much. It's more the Atreides perspective and Paul's perspective. That kind of cuts away to the Harkonnen just to kind of give you a idea of what else is going on that you need to know.
I think desperately needed the internal politics. It's one of the things I really liked about the David Lynch version was, I mean, when we talked about it on trial, Dave, our complaints was the constant narration. The actual wonkiness of the politics was probably the best part of it.
And the weirdness of David Lynch's film, because it's a David Lynch film.
Matthew Bond, The Mail on Sunday, UK. There's a sense of having seen too much of this sort of thing before.
I'm sorry, like a classic novel that influenced an entire genre is a bit derivative now.
Yeah, like that's a stunningly ignorant sentiment.
I want to hang on. I want to read that again just because I need to put that into perspective. There's a sense of having seen too much of this sort of thing before. Buddy, we got 20 some odd Marvel movies in the past 10 years. I mean, in a world with 20 Marvel movies that follow the same basic structure, I'm okay with Dune being slightly out of the box, but also slightly, we've seen this before. Get over it.
Yeah, it's almost like saying, like, oh, Jesus, is so derivative of Tatooine in Star Wars. We've seen desert planets before. It's like, yeah, where do you think they got the idea from?
Jordan Rolme of World of Real. It also feels like half a movie, all set up, no payoff. One conceived with the primary intention of world building before hopefully going for the kill shot in the sequel.
It's actually fairly accurate. I mean, it's a full movie. It's just half a book.
Yeah.
John Urbansich of JM Movies with a U. You might not be able to tell a player without a scorecard, none of whom are particularly engaging in this lengthy Part 1 assortment.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
They even color-coded it for your convenience.
I know! Like, who's lost about who's who in this particular endeavor, sir?
Kathia Woods of Cup of Soul. Impressively epic.
True.
I mean,
you're not wrong, but I question how helpful that is.
That's why I read it. Like, good. That's the kind of review I get from my kids. Like, did you like it? Yes, I like the girl. Not helpful.
I mean, there is a full review there, so I assume she has more to say. But yeah, not the greatest pull quote from the review. Whoever did that.
I do this with the full acknowledgement that they probably back up some of this in their review, but there has to be a better way of doing this, because if that's all you're going to put out there, it doesn't make me want to go read the review. It just makes me think, like, this person didn't really put any thought into this. Like some of these, I would actually like to go and see what they say to back up the comments that they're making.
Like I imagine Calth Woods, hopefully I got that name right, going to her editor or whoever chose that quote and reacting much the same way that Arthur Dent reacted to the entry in The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy about Earth.
Oh, let's not discuss what a miserable adaptation of the source material that movie is.
Speaking of being mostly harmless, Kevin Carr, a fat guy at the movies, one of our favorites.
This is not This is not a mostly harmless person. This man is a menace to the critical community. A menace.
It's epic, man. It's big, but it does fall into traps I've seen in science fiction because I've seen science fiction stuff because I'm a fat guy.
Okay, I'm not exactly sure what type of traps. I mean, credit for him at least not saying that it falls into sand traps. Get it? Get it? Get it? Get it?
Wait,
get it?
Wait. Can you do that line one more time?
Yeah, well, at least it doesn't fall into sand traps. Oh, I thought you were going to go with the sad trombone, but that was... So, Loki. There we go.
Okay, moron.
Look at that handsome devil with the creamy caramel smooth voice. Once
again, moron. When you're dealing with something that influenced the entire genre, it's a little bit like saying, I enjoy this Shakespeare fellow, but I've seen too much of the 3-act structure. Or maybe a better Shakespearean reference would be, but the soliloquies are a bit much. Like, haven't we seen too much of soliloquies in this latest adaptation of Hamlet? Do we really need the soliloquy? Hasn't the soliloquy been done? Like, this is what you're doing when you take formative material and drop it, decades later. Everyone looks at it and goes, "Oh, you're so." This is what established the precedent that you're saying it falls into. This was groundbreaking stuff when it originally came out. And I'm sorry you're not going to give it proper context because you're too lazy to read a book.
Chris McCoy of Memphis Flyer. Science fiction claims to be about tomorrow, but it's really about today.
Oh, congratulations. He finally figured it out. And here, I'm going to blow your mind. Most history movies are actually about today.
And for more on that, check out.
Oh, and you're telling me the Oscars are also political? Oh, fuck off.
Yeah, dude like Aaron Peterson.
And for more politics in your history movie, check out Ronnie and I reviewing The Last Duel, the most Me Too movie you'll see this year, set in the 1300s.
Can I just say, I listened to you guys and I read the synopsis.
Yes.
They really needed to maintain the ambiguity about Adam Driver's character's guilt. Like, taking a firm stance on that ruins the entire point of what that thing is. Like, the whole point about the trial by combat is that it doesn't actually solve anything. There's no, there's finality, but it's not about, it makes it no longer about the evidentiary process. And by showing the audience, he's guilty, you utterly remove the ability of that film.
Showed it twice, by the way. He was guilty.
Yeah.
In case you missed it the first time.
In case Rashomon, this ain't. Right?
Michael Medved of the Michael Medved Show. We hate you, Mike. I hate you, Michael Medved.
Mark hates you. I just
you didn't hang up on Robert yet.
I just called you. I'm just happy to call you a self-employed loser, but Mark actually hates you.
The inventive visuals and audio effects are world-class and often spellbinding, but the twists and turns are sometimes hard to follow. I'm Michael Medved. Listen to my radio show.
Okay, put down the phone. Look at the screen. Ears. Let's put on our listening ears, like in 3rd grade. You can do this. This isn't like a Marvel movie where we're gonna hold you by the hand and we're gonna take you and we're gonna show you, Shang-Chi's mom is dead. Her father wants to bring her back by going to another dimension. Okay, got that, she's dead. He wants to bring her back. And then okay, now we're gonna go to the other dimension. I'm still holding your hand. It's okay. Yeah, we're not gonna go too fast. Okay, now you see the big door has an evil soul-sucking monster behind it that's lying to him. Yeah, okay. And see, little soul-sucking monsters are coming out, implying that there's a big soul-sucking monster behind it. See, now there's the big soul-sucking monster, and it's sucking out his soul, okay? See, don't worry. You won't have to rub 2 brain cells together. Like I like Marvel movies, but you actually have to pay attention and listen to the dialogue. Those things that are usually used to explain stuff, and you'll be fine.
I have to ask you, you took your children to see this.
Yes.
Did your daughter have any trouble following the action?
When she was awake? No.
Okay, look,
I'll tell you this. My 7-year-old not once asked me what was going on. He was antsy, but he's 7. He gets to be antsy.
Okay, so Michael Medved of the Michael Medved Show, please listen to my radio program, had more trouble following the plot of this thing than your 7-year-old son who was vibrating in the chair next to you.
Correct.
And people take this jackwagon seriously.
John Serber of Decider. I can't take
What did you decide, sir?
God damn it. I can't take Dune seriously because it takes itself too seriously. This isn't to say Venezuela doesn't give the material the fresh vision it needs. Dune may deserve a second chance in a movie theater.
Sorry, what?
I really just needed more comedy in my movie about genocide. That's what I needed.
Like second chance? It already has a chance. And I don't get what this guy is trying to say with that sentence.
He's saying he wants to see Dune via Taika Waititi. That's what this asshole is saying.
Well, that just comes across as ungracious. Like, this is the most filial, most loyal adaptation ever. But David, one more.
But David, don't you understand? It takes the discussion of genocide and imperialism seriously. I need comedy. I need Led Zeppelin. That's what this idiot's saying. That's the crux of his point. How dare this film take itself how dare this drama, this action drama, take itself seriously? No, moron. This is heady stuff. How dare the people in your movie not do everything with a wink and a nod to the fourth wall? Oh, you miserable, useless sack of crap.
I double dog dare you to say that about The Dark Knight.
Boy, Batman really could use another turn in the theaters, couldn't he?
Yeah, so something with a bit more comedy, not so serious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Vincent Mancini of Uproxx, that noted vestige of journalism.
Let's not talk about Uproxx. Like, the fact I don't even need to see the review. The fact that he writes for that outlet is all I need to know.
Where I had been a complete sandworm virgin.
There's a mental image nobody needs.
I am not an incorrigible space piggy.
I think it's Spice Piggy.
Sorry.
Also another image no one needs.
I am not an incorrigible Spice Piggy. Thank you, Denis Villeneuve.
I'm not sure if this is a review or just someone's fetish fiction. Or
we also call that Star Wars, which is mostly George Lucas fetish fiction.
Ty Burr of Ty Burr's Watch List, top critic.
How did this self-employed loser get to be a top critic?
It's a lot of them on here. The movie isn't Lawrence of Arabia in space, but it comes pretty close. And I say that as someone who went in a doubter.
I mean, I'm not quite sure what to make of that, but to the people that keep complaining that Dune looks too much like, the desert and based on desert cultures, yes, it's a desert planet. We're going to base the things on the desert planet along the place on the planet where most people have been living that is a desert, because they probably have a pretty good idea on how that goes.
I'm just going to throw this out there to people, and I really mean this. There's a real finite way that life develops in certain conditions, especially extreme conditions. The fact that humanity evolved at all on Arrakis is something of a miracle.
It didn't actually. The Fremen did actually were
they
migrants.
They migrated.
Yeah, but very, very long ago.
Point being,
they were there first.
Yeah. Point being, if you have something that works in a specific harsh, if you said if Arrakis was a rainforest planet instead of a desert planet, but we had the same issues at hand.
And you could have big blue cat people on it.
Sure.
All right, there's a bunch of
the big blue cat people whose culture sure looks a lot like a bunch of people who live in a jungle, doesn't it, on Earth?
All right, there's a handful of these I got to read, so just let's quick hits and then we're done. But these couple here that I have on screen are fantastic.
Oh,
Armin
boy.
White hates everything, by the way. I don't think we've ever read anything of his that was fresh, and everything he writes is stupid. National Review: if you expect a sensual, kinetic, visually exciting movie version of Frank Herbert's renowned 1965 epic sci-fi novel, be prepared for a presentation of global malaise instead.
Yeah, because I sure read the book and thought, boy, that sure was sensual.
I don't know about
hang
you,
on,
but I've
hang on,
really
hang on.
enjoyed the Dune porn parodies.
Hang on. I'm going to defend him in the following way.
Okay,
I don't think he means sensual as in erotic.
sure.
I think he means it as in playing with the senses.
Really should have used a different word then.
I'm not.
Yeah,
hang on,
especially
hang on.
after that whole like worm virgin spice piggy thing.
Okay,
See, now
look,
you're doing it.
it's not his fault that he's below that guy on the list.
Fair point, but still.
And I'm not saying his vocabulary shouldn't have been expanded in this particular instance. It should have. There's better words. I'm only saying I don't think he intended to mean, I don't think he was lobbying to see the story of O. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Why can't we get that remade in theaters in
Let's
IMAX?
not.
I need
You know
an
what?
epic
No.
IMAX story of O.
You know why? I can tell you why if you really want to know.
Because it's porn?
No. Believe it or not, no.
Okay.
Because 50 Shades of Grey.
Fuck off.
Look, I deserve that for even referencing that particular dumpster fire of creativity, literature, and understanding of how human beings interact with one another. It's terrible, and anyone who read it and said otherwise, shame on you. Go stand in a corner.
Wait for the witch to get you. Speaking of the witch, Ed Whitfield of Robert's favorite publication, The Outre. Ooh, The Outre.
It's a good thing we went to the visual. Right? Because when you used to say the outre, I visualized it being spelled very, very differently. It is literally the tray full of ooh.
Put the word out. Someone at Waters has a gambling problem. Not helpful.
I thought they did a pretty good job this time around.
The hell does that have to do with anything?
Well, the implication being that they are putting money on these feature films without any sort of real guarantee they're going to make money. But that is an asinine pull from his review.
It really is. Like
And that's kind of just the description of what a producer does.
Yeah, like that's not. Look, I'm going to. You know what? No, I'm not going to give you the benefit of the doubt that your full review is actually worthwhile. But I will say this: that's a terrible pull from what I'm assuming is an equally terrible review. In fact, just to kind of dig the knife in here, I'm going to go out on a limb and say the reason they pulled that it's the most coherent sentence you put together in your review.
Granted, it doesn't really say if he's saying that as a good or a bad thing.
I know, like all we have is the fact that he landed positive on it.
Yeah.
All right.
Personally, I think Hollywood could use more of a gambling problem.
No kidding. Everything's safe these days.
I think they could use a drinking problem.
Oh, they've already got
They already got that. Yeah.
Robert Horton of The Scarecrow.
All right.
But why? But for why? A minimum of dialogue and a multitude of meaningless glances.
Meaningful.
Fuck, meaningful. You're right.
That
Sorry.
doesn't make the review that much better.
It doesn't. It really doesn't. I just want to make sure he can't say you misquoted me and I don't deserve this kind of abuse. No, buddy. If you, sir, can't handle the ability of actors to convey emotions and thoughts and feelings purely with their faces and their eyes and how they look at each other, and you need everything spelled out on a silver platter for you, you deserve to watch nothing but Marvel movies for the rest of your life.
Last one, and then we're done. Chris Knight of the National Post. The first line in Dune is, "Dreams are messages from the deep." It is in part warning, part invitation. Don't be afraid. Fear is the mind killer. Quote, in quotation marks, if you, Jesus Christ, parentheses, I have to go to bed. If you don't get that reference, then it applies to you even more. Open your eyes and let the dream take you.
Okay. This was
the
another.
spice must flow. Long live the fighters. The sleeper has awakened. Yes, very clever.
You could not have thrown more like happy quotes into that thing if you tried, and I'm sure you did. But moreover, what an odd choice to pull from that review. Like you're trying to what, replicate the desire for a dreamlike state in your crappy writing? Like what the hell?
All right, that wraps up our Dune review, everybody. This week on the Radulich Broadcasting Network, last night myself and Sean, I guess, had a good review of Donnie Darko celebrating its 20th anniversary.
Wait. When you say a good review, do you mean you reviewed the movie positively, or that you guys had fun and did a good job on the show reviewing it?
According to Andrew, he had a very enjoyable listen to our review.
I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, is why I ask. Because if you were too favorable to Donnie Darko, like, we got problems.
I honestly thought Sean was going to tear into it more than he did. I think for my part, my defense of it was basically, had it just focused on the mental health part of it, it probably is a salvageable movie. I think it gets caught up in it. I think the metaphysical stuff detracts from what could have been a good central narrative. You can listen to us talk about it. The only reason why I was like, I guess it was okay, Sean and I were having a lot of audio problems where he couldn't hear me at times. And so there was that, like, where I would talk, he wouldn't hear it until 10 seconds later. So there was stuff like that. There was, I actually had to go back and edit it.
Ooh, I'm proud of you, Mark.
Almost burnt down my fucking house in anger about it. But
Mark, we've been doing that. I do that. David does that. Jesse does that. It's okay.
No, it's not.
It really is.
Editing is the mind killer.
No. Your fear of editing is the mind killer.
The spice must flow. Anyway, we had a review of Crown Jewel. We're re-airing a bunch of our Paranormal Activity movies from a couple of years back because of Next of Kin that comes out this Friday. The aforementioned Last Jewel review with Ronnie. Jesse has an entire series of Rise of the Midnight Suns mini podcasts that are going to be dropping one day a piece until Halloween. Tomorrow, speaking of which, myself, Jesse Starcher, and Robert Cooper will be reviewing Halloween self-titled album from June. Gavin and I will wrap up Ted Lasso season 2, and then on Friday,
you said wrap up a lasso. That's funny.
Myself and Alexis Haina will be doing a triple feature on Scooby Meets Courage, Muppets Haunted Mansion, and My Little Pony, Rah Rah, We're an Angry Mob. And then Jason Teasley finally gets his wish. I can cut everybody else's shows. I cut David's shows. I cut Robert Winfree shows. Thanks. But I tried to cut Jason Teasley shows, and he threw himself a giant man tantrum. So, season 1. Friday night. Saturday.
To be fair, when Mark says he cuts my shows, he then also and other people wind up deciding that I have to host the what if discussion.
Have fun with that.
I just have to point this out. This is my fault. I was out at the time, so I didn't see the discussion because I don't have a phone. And when I come back, and I see that there's been activity in this chat, and I know what it is. I know it's the what if group. So I'm like, okay, let me see what's happened. And Mark goes, okay, we have a scheduling problem. So we either need to do X or Y or Z, and they go through it. And then one of the options presented was, so we either need to have Robert step out, in which case we can do it here, or have me step out, in which case you all get together here. And had I been here, I would have happily said, I don't need to be on this.
He would have dove out of it.
You are welcome to do this without me. I don't have a tremendous amount to contribute. And instead, because I wasn't there to advocate on my own behalf, everyone decided, no, we'll move it to this date, and Robert will host. And I watched this happen, and I felt like look, Mark hasn't made the reference, so I need to now. I felt like McNulty coming back and discovering that no one had been monitoring the phone lines, looking down the list. This is it. This is them ordering the hit. And because there was no one here covering this, we can't use this in court. What the hell?
Jesus, what the fuck did I do?
You happy now, bitch?
Our decision-making process functions like the UN Security Council. Guess what, Robert? We're going to Vietnam.
Oh, I hate the UN.
Anyway,
So
into a lesser degree, the Radulich and Broadcasting Network.
I don't hate the Radulich and Broadcasting Network.
So-
I have no plans to kill most of you.
So Saturday, we're having fun with horror trivia. That's Jesse and Alexis hosting that game show. And on Halloween, we've got Power Rangers on A Nightmare on Elm Street, our re-airing of our Trick or Treat review, Reanimated. I think the last part of Rise of the Midnight Suns, and I think another Unspoken Issues for Spawn #9. Next week, we've got Eternals by Neil Gaiman, Last Night in Soho, Paranormal Activities, Next of Kin, which will feature a segment dedicated entirely to Sean revisiting the first 4 Paranormal Activity movies, and it'll be 20 minutes, just 20 minutes of Sean all by his lonesome talking about those movies. Because as funny as it is for him to yell out, how did Toby get a copy of Final Cut Pro? He'd like another shot at those movies. I told him it wasn't necessary, but he wants it anyway. So I'm giving him his own section because we don't have money to talk about. We'll be reviewing the new Ministry album.
If you'd like to, hang on. We would like to have more money to talk about, so please sponsor us.
And while Pat and I will be reviewing Dark Side of the Ring Season 3B in the afternoon, there is no evening podcast because I'm going to see Eternals with my kids. And then on Friday, the last thing I'll plug here, Robert and I have all year been having this very lengthy conversation about the state of film, which somehow or other led us back to this past year's Oscar season. So we, later than anyone would care to hear about it, but we're doing it anyway. We are going to watch and review Sad Piano, the movie, otherwise known as Nomadland.
You know, hang on. I'm partway through that movie as we currently record this.
Yeah.
I didn't realize when I heard that joke. I thought it was all about the theme.
Yeah.
I thought like the themes the movie touches on.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the only musical score is in fact a sad piano playing. It's a little bit disconcerting. I'm not enjoying this movie for a variety of reasons. Now, again, to be fair, I still have about 2/3 left to go, so my opinion might change. My experience viewing it might change. And if you want my full review, again, Mark and I are going to be talking about that.
Mank,
which I have seen, and The Father, which got Anthony Hopkins his second Oscar, and apparently nearly led to riots when that particular award did not go to the late Chadwick Boseman.
Yeah. All right, David, you're next. Your last part of the Star Trek retrospective, the Kelvin years, will actually be airing on November 13th, and that is being aired then because a few days later we're getting Star Trek Discovery Season 4, which we don't review on this network. But hey, synergy.
No one. Look. No.
If you ask, I will take the bullet.
No. I'm when World's Best Country or whatever the new Star Trek show is called.
Strange New Worlds.
That's the one. When Strange New Worlds debut, then we'll do that. And of course, Picard Season 2, I've actually already got on the calendar. I've taken a wild guess at when it ends.
Right, so anyway, so to clarify, we are going to do Discovery at some point.
No.
Is that what you're saying? No. Okay. Oh, we're going to do Strange New Worlds. Gotcha.
Correct. Yeah. I made an exception for Jason because of Man Tantrum. I don't want to watch more than one season of television at a time. So
and look, no one wants to watch Discovery.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really cares that we're gonna bash that show. Like
no one cares about that show at all.
Except for the people writing it.
No, right. I'm not entirely convinced that's
Do
true.
your plugs.
Okay. So still going to make a case for Lower Decks at some point, but Lower Decks.
Oh, when I'm done with Jason.
Yeah,
stop
fair enough.
Me. I'm busy.
Yeah, see how you like it, Mark. How do you like that? No. Yeah. Robert is getting some great pathos at this moment. Okay, yeah, I will probably be on for Eternals, assuming I have anything to say after seeing the movie. Star Trek retrospective to look forward to. Are we doing the Cowboy Bebop Netflix live action thing at some point?
We are. That is scheduled. Hang on, keep going, and I'll just yell it at you while you're talking.
Yeah. So when that comes on, I will most likely be on that. And for December,
have you seen the last trailer? The latest trailer for that?
Yeah,
John,
we'll
John Cho, man.
we'll see. We'll see. And
December 7th. Now, wait, you're on that one because you're not on my list here, so I'll put you
oh,
on.
I would like to be on that one. Yes.
All right, there you
Probably Spider-Man: Far From Home, and I believe we are also going to do the first season of Foundation, the other great sci-fi classic being adapted this year.
Wait a minute.
Will it be as good as Dune? We're not sure yet.
Hang on. I don't know if you're actually on Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Well, I would probably like to be.
You may not have room.
Okay, well, maybe I'll be on the round table. We'll sling that web when we get to it.
God damn it! There's too many of you. Hang on.
Look, there's too many people who come out of the woodwork on rare occasion for a handful of things that they care about, and the rest of us that are here week after week after week after week just go, I want to be them.
Well, here's the problem. There's no room left anymore because I try to cap these things at 4, and we already have Robert, Alexis, and Gavin apparently took the last spot.
Okay, well, for the time being, then I'm not on that one. But if you need a pitch hitter, we'll see what happens.
That's fine. Want to be on the Matrix?
No one wants to be on the Matrix.
Put me down as a maybe. We'll see.
Okay,
closer to
you guys got to start calling this stuff early. Like when I put
you only post a schedule a month in advance.
No,
I don't. I have this stuff set up months in advance. I don't tell anyone about it
Mark,
until a month before.
Quick, show David the schedule real fast.
Okay, hang on 1 second, because for the real comedic effect of this, for the real comedic effect of this, I will only show him just the podcasting schedule.
Yeah. That's how this works.
Okay, hang on. I got to set it up.
This is your bird box moment, David.
I don't know what that means.
I haven't seen the movie either, but apparently it involves looking at something that drives you insane.
All those red dots are podcasts. I think we froze David.
Scroll down to December just for the laugh.
Did we really lose David? He hasn't moved. Yep.
No,
there it is. Oh, okay.
You ruined it, Mark.
Hang on. Here's December.
I can keep going. That's December. Here comes January. Ready? Boom! January.
You look at all those Fridays you have open on January, Mark.
All right. Well, I have some suggestions.
No. That's February. Again.
A lot of Fridays.
February doesn't look that bad at the moment.
That's very full, people. Stop trying to fill up my schedule. So that's February.
So
that's March.
Yeah, March is where things start picking back up, to the shock of no one.
April.
April's got a bit of it. May is good.
May
we haven't completely filled up yet.
That's because we're waiting to see how many movies in the next couple of months get postponed to May, which already has a Damn You Hollywood set every week, it looks like.
Yep.
Iron Eagle commentary on that. On Trial Top Gun on that. Yeah.
You're not on Iron Eagle. That's a re-air.
One of those Damn You
Edit me in.
One of those Damn You Hollywoods I'm not on, but only one.
That would be Ronnie who took that bullet for you. So it's June.
If he wants to talk Legally Blonde 3, God bless him.
I've already worked it out with him. I said, there's no way I can get anyone else to do this, including the girl I work with. Please take that job for me. And he said, I got you, Bubala. So that's June.
So what did that cost you?
My soul.
Ronnie doesn't want your soul.
There's July. See, and so we get to August where we actually don't have a tremendous amount on the schedule. So there it is.
So point being, if there's something coming up that you want to be on, call dibs because it's already on the schedule.
Yep. I am not holding people's hands. You all have the same access to the same list that I do. Call it out ahead of time. Because that's why I took it out of the public chat and started making everyone talk to me privately because I was getting it was like Game of Thrones. They were like, people were like, "Hi, would you make an alliance with me?" Like, yes, we'll talk Matrix. It's fine.
We're playing a game of diplomacy.
Yeah.
For those of you who never played that game, you may not get that reference, but
speaking of playing games, do your plug so we can get out of here.
All right. I cover professional wrestling, even though I maligned it earlier, and I stand by that because contemporary professional wrestling I find utterly uninteresting. But if you do, I called you a brain-dead abused cultist. And while I might feel that way about some of you, and look, you guys know who you are. You're the ones who come in every week and who go, boy, I don't know why I'm watching. I know why I'm watching, because I have to. When I don't have to.
With it. Yes, get on with it.
I cover
So,
it.
Loki.
Hang on. I cover professional wrestling a few nights a week. I covered this last week. I covered Raw this last Monday because Tony Acero had a tech issue, I suppose. So my 3 hours of suffering over there. I cover AEW's Dark Elevation. My review for that is up in the Wrestling Zone of 411 Mania. Wednesday, I cover whatever MLW puts out. Apparently, they recently released the full match for Alexander Hammerstone and Jacob Fatu, which went about 37 minutes, I think. The video is 37, but it includes entrances. Those two guys going 30 minutes was a mistake. The cut-down version on Fightland is much better. So I'll cover whatever their Fusion Alpha event is this particular week, and I cover WWE SmackDown on Fridays. Yeah, Charlotte Flair.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us
Hang on.
here.
All right, my big thing. Sorry. Look, you cut me off in the middle of my sad head shake about the existence of Charlotte Flair. Saturdays, I cover whatever the UFC is running. This last week was UFC on ESPN Plus 54. Decent main event. Fun little slugfest on the prelims. You can find my full report in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. This Saturday is UFC 267 with 2 title fights and a pretty rockin' lightweight fight between Dan Hooker and Islam Makhachev. That is free to anyone who has ESPN Plus here in the United States and will start. The prelims start, I believe, at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time because they're going live. They're going prime time in Abu Dhabi rather than here in the United States. So I will be covering that. And if you want my preview for that, I host the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. Wherever you're listening to this show, you can plug that into your search bar and you can probably find me talking mixed martial arts. So please give that a listen if you're so inclined. I have my full preview for that event.
And
Next week.
And on November 19th, Robert and I will be doing alternative commentary for Demetrius Andrade versus Jason Quigley on DAZN.
I really hope you're joking. But I can't. I'm not going to click over and look at the calendar. I'm going to tell you you're joking. We're going to leave it at that.
So Robert likes to do the DAZN fights with me, so he'll be on Demetrius Andrade, following up from our Demetrius Andrade versus Luke Keeler from right before lockdown.
Mark, why are you lying to the people?
We'll talk.
Why are you lying to the people, Mark?
I was hoping if I just sprung it on you, you'd agree.
No.
Damn it.
No. I mean, first of all, hang on. I think there's a UFC event on.
It's on a Friday, or I wouldn't have even asked.
Really?
Yeah.
That could be complicated for me then.
No, it'll be done by the time the match. Yeah, SmackDown will be over by the time Demetrius Andrade gets in the ring.
I thought you meant the UFC event was on a Friday. I had to double check that. No, Of course they put Demetrius Andrade on a Friday. No one cares about him.
So you can check out Robert and I covering that fight.
No, you cannot. No, Mark, you dragged me to one Demetrius Andrade fight. That was
David,
enough.
how much boxing do you watch?
None at all. Well, I've seen a couple of Rocky movies.
So your first answer was correct. So this last episode was a preview of the upcoming UFC 267. Also featured some of my thoughts on Shakur Stevenson. You can listen to Mark and
Daniel Lasby.
Yeah, I listened to a little bit of what you guys did. They provided some watch along stuff for Shakur Stevenson and Jamel Herring. So again, you have some of my thoughts on that. A lot of stuff from this last week. And this coming week will be a review of UFC 267 and a preview of UFC 268, which is another really stacked pay-per-view featuring 2 title fights and a fairly notable support fight.
Stupidly going up against the Canelo fight.
Yeah, I think they're going to be just fine against Canelo in this case.
Well, I'll have Chris Bailey on for that since Robert will be tied up with the UFC. So, yes, you will be getting alternative commentary for Canelo versus Caleb Plant, and you'll be having featuring me and Chris Bailey and possibly Daniel Lasby. It depends on if he gets the show or not.
Look, the UFC will get out of the way for certain MMA or certain boxing events. Largely, this is determined by how Dana White feels about any of the boxers involved. He was happy to get out of the way of Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder 3 because he wanted to watch it and he kind of likes Tyson Fury. Dana White does not like Canelo and happily counter-programs him at every opportunity, it seems. So instead of watching Canelo and Plant, I will be watching the rematch between Rose Namajunas and Zhang Weili and the rematch between Kamaru Usman and Colby Covington.
All right, folks, thank you for joining us here on our review of Dune. Next week, Last Night in Soho and Paranormal Activity Next of Kin. For David Wright and Robert Winfree, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and always use the right bathroom.